All right, great. Glenn Stein, Realty Executives broker owner here with Harry Lumkin. Harry,
Glad to meet you.
thanks for being here. Thanks for being here.
Oh, fantastic. I'm glad to be here.
Well, one of the things I wanted to do, I think, part of the reason I bring this up every week is, we know a lot of people are doing amazing things or have done amazing things in their lives here in the villages. And I think there's so many resources here. Harry, Mr. Lumpkin is one of those people. Thank you for your service, by the way. You've tremendous record of service. Tell us about it, please.
Sure. Well, I'm Harry Lumkin, as Glenn has said. I have been honored and privileged to serve our nation for 26 years in the military. I was lucky enough to retire as a full colonel, commanded at all levels of the Army through colonel. I had the privilege of serving in the Pentagon with General Colon Powell. I was his briefer, a logistics briefer in the Pentagon.
Right.
One of the other interesting assignments.
But wait a second. What does that mean? Logistics briefer. What is that? Like I don't know what that is. What is that?
Well, what I did, all the services, right, the 4 services, would prepare information for decisions based on military operations. That information was fed to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which I was a member of.
Right.
My job was to handle resource allocations, the integration of those resources to make sure that the right things at the right time was at our fighting forces' hands.
Right.
And so my job was to collect all of that data from the 4 military services, integrate it, and brief the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the 4 service chiefs for their decision-making process.
Well, I have to ask you this, because what you're describing is something straight out of a movie. Right? Yeah. So when you look at movies, how realistic is what you see on the big screen versus what actually really happens?
Well, I think they try to get some level of true expertise into the process. But it goes a lot deeper than what we oftentimes see.
Okay.
And I think what the difference, at least from my experience, is how much preparation the entire Pentagon effort goes into preparing our leaders to make the right combat decisions. Right. And I sometimes it bothers me when I would hear key individuals say, well, we aren't prepared for this. There's nothing that the military is not prepared to execute. We have plans for every kind of contingency. Now, they would have to be updated from time to time, but we do a great job in making sure our senior leaders are prepared to make the right decisions there.
Nice. That's good. So you're telling me there's more. So tell me more about your history as well.
Well, one of the assignments I think I'm most proud of, I was the assistant professor of psychology at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Mm-hmm. And one of the key things that occurred during that time period, my job along with the team was to put together a program to successfully integrate the first women into West Point. All right. And I thought that was a real challenge because at that time, if you can imagine, back in the 76 time frame, there was very few even military leaders and people in the country by and large who felt women should not serve in combat. Therefore, there was no place for them at a place like the Military Academy at West Point.
Yes.
So my job was to bring about a change of attitude and to motivate the young ladies who came in that first class to go on and succeed. And I had an interesting experience a few months ago. My grandson was selected to go to West Point.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And so he took me up as for the orientation.
Ooh.
And while I was there, at the big formal dinner congratulating the new young candidates, they called me up. They said, hey, we got somebody special here today. Colonel Lumkin, come up. So I went up and they said, we have something and someone special for you. And they called up the first young lady to graduate 40 years ago from the academy. And she came up and tears were in her eyes and she said, I've looked for you for over 40 years.
Wow.
You have taken the time, you and some of the other professors, And if you convinced us to stay, you convinced us to give the best that we have. And we wanted to say thank you. As she said, on behalf of that entire class of women who graduated, let me say thank you. And it was an emotional moment. All of a sudden you realize, well, they graduated 40 years ago from West Point. But that was a significant change in our country's history and what we are all about as a nation and as a military. Yeah. And what was really unique when I evaluated it, we have in our class of West Pointers about 4,000 cadets.
Right.
Then it was 62. Today, it's 1,000 of the 4,000 are women, and 7 of the top 10 were women.
Wow.
And they're not only doing well academically and in the academy, but in our nation's military and our fighting forces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, and it's ironic, African American.
Yes.
Like you, obviously you saw struggles. I don't know if you want to speak to that or not.
No, I don't have a problem speaking to that. Yeah. It was oftentimes very interesting. I've even been on post and installations being the only Black officer there. Mm. And when I was in Vietnam, for example, the entire year I was there, I never saw a Black company grade officer other than myself.
Interesting.
And the Black soldiers there were so excited when they would see a Black officer, especially a junior officer. I'm not talking about some general or something.
Right. Yeah, somebody they can relate to.
Yeah, they would come over, they would talk, they would make, want to know what was going on, what the reality was as to why we were fighting there. And it was interesting. And it was a unique time for me because at the end of my time in Vietnam, I had planned to get out. But I didn't. There was a whole sequence of events that occurred after that made my willingness to give back, it was elevated in my life.
What happened? There was something hit you.
Yeah, it really did. When I thought about these young soldiers, and so many of them felt that oftentimes their story was not being heard or told. Oh, right. And they would say, if we're ever in a situation like that, we're not quite sure that the white officers or whatever would really understand our story. And there was nobody there to protect our interests. Oh, right. And all of a sudden I realized, hey, that's me. I have an opportunity to do that. Yes. And that's not waving a flag or anything. No, I get it. It was just my opportunity to step up and be counted. Now, I never had planned on staying 26 years.
I don't think anybody ever does.
Yeah, but things just evolved, and the Army was good to me and to my family. Yeah. And I think, was able to make a contribution throughout that time.
Nice. Yeah, that's fun. And then obviously that led to West Point and women
and command at all levels in the Army, and it was a good time for us. Our family was very close. We moved 23 times in 26 years.
That's all? and we love that. Being in real estate, we love that.
And so that was kind of neat for us. Right. I drew our immediate family close together. Right. I have the most fantastic wife that the world has ever seen.
Probably patient as all get out.
Really, truly the wind under my wings. I mean, she has really been right by my side, and 2 fantastic sons who are now married and beautiful wives and grandkids, and we're living the dream.
Awesome. In the villages.
Villages.
How did you end up in the villages, by the way? How'd that happen?
Well, Connie and I, my wife Connie, we're ballroom dancers.
Oh, right.
And so we were ballroom
dancers. Since when? How long? No, you didn't learn it here.
No, we competed.
All right.
For 6 years in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
And we thoroughly enjoyed it. And we were at a big ball in Washington, D.C. Right. And some guy was sitting there at our table, and he said, Harry and Connie, I'm going to play golf at this place called The Villages. And he's going on and on about it.
Like, what is this place?
Yeah. And I said, yeah, okay. We're being polite.
Yeah.
And he said, well, aren't you going to be going to a big conference down in Orlando? I said, sure. He said, you should talk her into taking off from work, going with you, and go to The Villages. So she did. that was not the purpose. She was just
Right.
going to relax.
Right.
And then we got out early. And I said, let's go up and see this place. So I could go back and tell him he's full of stuff. God, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe we bought a house 4 hours after arriving to the Villages. Had never, ever seen it before.
That tends to happen.
Yes.
That's just kind of the way. You're unique, but not unique in this way, because we hear a lot of those stories. This is true.
It was really.
And when was this? When was this?
This was in 2008.
2008, right?
Yeah.
It was much different. 2008, even just 12 years ago. That's still significantly different.
Yeah, and we were had no intentions of retiring.
Yeah.
We just came down to look around.
Yeah.
After we bought in 4 hours, we called our kids. And there's silence on the phone. And they said,
"You're doing what?
Yeah, you and Mom take 6 months to make a decision. What do you mean in 4 hours you bought a house?"
Plus, did you have little grandkids as well? Were there little grandkids running around?
No, not at that time.
Okay.
And so it was pretty good. It worked out. We have never looked back. We retired a year later in 2009. And been here the entire time, and we love it.
Are you noticing, and we were talking about this before, are you noticing there's just a lot of people that have retired here that are like you? Or are you unique that way?
No, I'm not unique. What is really unique, you don't know who it is you're talking to oftentimes and what they have done in their lives.
Yes.
And people don't spend a whole lot of time raising or waving their own flag. That, all of a sudden you're in a conversation, you realize, holy wow, this guy or this lady has done this or done that.
Yes.
And so I find that unique. I like the approach that the Villages have, that there's no distinguishing classes of people.
Right.
Regardless of what kind of home you own or whatever, everybody's treated the same. And no one is from here. So everybody tries to mesh and become part of.
Actually, I will tell you, I think I met the first person that was kind of born in the Villages.
Oh, really?
He just interviewed for a job. He's 21. He went to the charter school since pre-K. I think he's the only one who's original.
Yeah. So we've had fun. We've enjoyed it. We're involved in a lot of things here.
How do we? And this is interesting. This is something I'm trying to do as well, and maybe it exists, and maybe I don't realize it. And to your point of, there's a lot of people here that have done so many different things, and people are usually, it's funny because the people that are most successful, they're not the type of people most of the time to be look at me, this is what I've done in my life.
That's right.
How do we get people to kind of come out? Because there's such a great resource, like a mentor program, or I don't know if that exists. Or have you thought about that?
It does.
Yeah.
I think if you look at just the scholarships that are awarded to the local area, and the majority of those clubs and activities that donate scholarships to those young people.
Yes. The Rotary Club. You're talking about the Rotary Club.
Rotary Club is one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we just gave, I'm vice president of the Martin Luther King Commemorative Committee. We just gave 12 $4,000 scholarships.
Wow.
I mean, and so they are there, people are there who will find a niche in these organizations, and then they start to...
That's how they're serving.
That's exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And once people find out, if they happen to find out what you did in your prior life, that forces, oftentimes, you get elevated into positions.
That's when you're in trouble.
That's exactly.
You thought you were retired.
That's
oh
right.
Man, I'm busy.
Yeah. And so that's kind of neat. I think the whole process is fair.
So what are some of the other clubs? Are you involved in other clubs besides Rotary?
Oh, sure. I am a deacon at my church. I was the chairman of our deacon board for a couple of years. And I love that, of serving spiritually.
Yeah. Which church?
At First Baptist Church of the Villages, 42.
Right. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then I was president of the African American Club, which is a growing large group of folks here. And it looks, sometimes you can walk around and not see many of us.
This is true.
That's
but
right.
A lot of people don't realize that.
That's
right. There's also I think there's a Latin club. And
that's exactly
Korean
right.
club and all that type of thing.
And so, I was there, and then I was president of the Vietnam Veterans Organization here when we won the Outstanding Chapter of the Nation. Of 550 Vietnam chapters nationwide. We won the best of the best.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yeah. And let's see, I've been president of the Baby Boomers Club. There's 1,000 members in the Baby Boomers.
Yes.
So I've really had an opportunity to, get engaged in a lot of different activities here.
Right.
We belong to about 14 clubs.
Oh my God. That's a record, I think.
And we are engaged, and my wife teaches Zumba.
Oh my God.
I mean, so we're doing it.
Are you busier now than before?
Yes.
It seems that way. I've heard that.
But you are doing something because this is what you want to do, and not because it's part of the job.
So are you enjoying this more at this time because it's really in your heart to serve?
It is.
Right.
What we oftentimes get concerned about is being overcommitted. That can happen.
No, not with 55 clubs.
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all.
And then you step back and say, wait a minute, I mean, this is all good,
right?
But we need to make sure we take some personal time to just enjoy things.
Right.
And so keeping that balance is critical for anyone coming in here.
How did you develop a heart for service? Where did that come in?
From my family, from my mom and my dad. They brought that kind of norm and mores into our family.
What did they do?
Well, my dad was the director of the Baltimore Sun paper in Maryland. Okay. And my mom was a teacher, and then she was a director of buying for the old Heck Company chain, Heck May Company. Now it's part of the Macy's.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they were very active in the community.
Okay.
And especially in our church.
Yes.
And that was the foundation of the whole Lumkin clan.
Got it.
And so that was very, very special to us. And I just learned a lot. I noticed my dad, for example, when he retired after 40 plus years, they said, you know what? He only missed 2 days of work. And that's because he broke his foot and couldn't get to work for 2 days.
Wow.
But that's the kind of norm that we had in our family.
So good work ethic.
Yes.
Service.
And giving the best that you have.
Are you seeing, it's interesting. It's easy for generations, and I'm moving into that generation, older generations where they look down at, let's say millennials.
Yeah.
And it seems like every generation is worried about the one that's behind you. Like, I don't know if they're going to be able to pull their weight. And, you followed the greatest generation and, that type of thing. But what do you see with millennials? And you're probably doing some service as well, some mentorship as well.
Sure.
So what do you see?
The best of the best.
Yeah, they're good. Huh?
They really are. They have capabilities available to them that was not available to us.
Right.
And they know how to use that capability.
Yes.
And when I'm talking to veterans groups, or I make a lot of speeches, I'm all over the place doing that. And I share with our individuals that you have to be careful about what you're saying to that younger generation. Because in my generation, when my mom and dad says, this is it, I said, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and that was it.
Yes.
Well, now the young people will go on and they will verify the facts.
Right.
They will
They're going to check you out on Instagram
exactly right.
and Facebook.
That's exactly. So all of this stuff and then you got to be careful because you're preaching one thing to them, then you're performing and acting another way, and they will know the difference.
Right.
And so parents got to be very, very cautious of really, talking about something and then walking the walk.
Right.
Because their kids and grandkids will know. And we didn't have that capability. But by and large, the young kids really want to do well. But they need some, not motivation, because they're motivated to do well.
Right.
Because the rewards are out there. But sometimes they may need some guidance. And we need to put in perspective how we are willing to share that with them. We don't need to spend our time downing them because they are now utilizing the tools that because we were lacking in it, we helped develop in the first place now.
This is true. We put it together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we need to sometimes step back, share a little guidance, but also be good listeners. And not just imparting information, but to listen at what they are saying. Because the environment they are functioning in is different than the environment we functioned in. And if we don't listen closely to what they're telling us, we will give the wrong advice. So we have to be good listeners as we move and support our young people.
Sounds wise. Yeah. Well, and you look at it, the last 10, 15 years has changed dramatically.
Oh, yeah.
So there's such a massive change, massive gap between the technology has changed everything.
Yes. Oh, I agree.
And it's only going to get more interesting. Yeah. Like, this is just the beginning of what we're going to see. So
I agree.
Wait 10 years.
Yeah, well, we're part of that generation where we can't wait till the grandkids come so we give them all the electronics and say, hey,
how do you use this thing? It's still in plastic.
No, you're exactly right. But I think that generation is ready. Our young generation is ready. And I think each generation gets better.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's a good thing.
Right.
When we came back from Vietnam, as you're aware, the dissonance within the nation was so great. The veterans were blamed and all of that. But I share with the Vietnam veterans, for example, hey, listen, the time is over about complaining about what happened 50 years ago. Yeah. There's nothing we can do about that.
Yes.
But we can make it better for the next generation of young military personnel coming out of Iraq.
Yes.
And Afghanistan. What are we doing other than complaining about helping them be ready to take that next step?
Makes sense.
And if we aren't doing that, then we've wasted our time and theirs.
Yes.
And so I think many of those organizations are really concerned about making it better for them, making our nation stand out as special to our young people, and let them know that we as Americans appreciate the sacrifices that they give.
What was the most interesting mission you were ever involved in?
I would say in Vietnam, once we were called upon I started home from Vietnam. Our unit was pulled out. And I was really excited I was coming home. And I called my wife. They sent my unit into Japan for a couple of days to get refitted, and then we were going to go back to the States for this grand reception. And I called back to my wife, who lived on a military post while we were gone, and she was crying. And I said, well, what's wrong? She said, you're not coming home. I said, what do you mean I'm not coming home? She said, they just called the wives together in the theater, and your unit is going to be redeployed somewhere. They didn't say where.
Right.
Well, what happened was, long story short, they sent us back to Vietnam. At that time, which is in 72, the North invaded the South, and they were just pushing right through. Most of the Americans had gone. And so...
And you're going back in.
We were going back in.
Right.
And so we got into Da Nang, which is in the northern area, and it was, the whole city and post was ablaze. And so we tried to send, my unit had helicopters, and we tried to send helicopters in to support our unit. Then we got waved off, and they said, it is so bad, you guys can't get in here. And that was a tough mission. Why it was tough for us, we got about 30 helicopters in. We were prepared to put in 100 when we were finally waved off. And I always wondered what happened to all of those guys. Did they all get out okay?
Yeah.
As they were being overrun and overwhelmed at that point. And I don't know what happened to them. And so that was an interesting mission, but it was fulfilling from the perspective that we were able to provide some cover and get some of them out of there safely.
Yes. Nice.
So that was, from a combat perspective,
yes.
that was probably one of the mission things. And I don't talk about that very much. Even today, as I walk by the Vietnam Wall, all these years I've never approached the wall, even though it's
interesting.
Close. When I was at the Pentagon, I run by it every day. And when my family, they all respect that. In my infantry airborne ranger class, of that class, it was 201, 137 were killed or wounded in Vietnam. And so when I go to that wall, it's not just names on the wall, it's faces. And so to this point, now maybe someday I will do that. But to this day, I don't. But these were outstanding Americans who did what they needed to do to give all of us an opportunity to enjoy places like the Villages today.
What's your mission in the Villages?
I think my mission is to continue to give the best that I have. That when people look at all Americans in the Villages, they can say, regardless of who they are, this is the excellence they bring to the table. And that's what I attempt to do.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Harry, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for being
Thank you.
here.
I really
that.
appreciate
Yes,
that.
yes.
Thank you.